The group games are done. It's on to the quarterfinals. How have the Hurricanes guys done so far? Well, we'll talk about all of that on a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. I'm your host, Zach Martin of the Credential Carolina Hurricanes, beat writer over at the Hockey Writers, also the host of the Surge Cast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all of my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. On today's show, we're going to do an Olympic update on all of the guys and how they've done so far through the group stages as we move on to the quarterfinal qualifiers and the quarterfinals and all that stuff. Who have been my three Hurricane standouts of the tournament so far, and we'll kind of look at what the qualifier knockout stages look like before we get into the actual quarterfinals. But before we jump into all that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Use profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Now, we're through the three group stages, three group games at least, and we know how everything kind of shaken out. Canada's got the 1 seed, USA's got the 2 seed, Slovakia 3, and then Finland 4. But how are the Hurricanes guys in particular, how have they done so far through the tournament? Well, for Canada, Seth Jarvis has played in the last 2 games for Team Canada. So far, no goals, no points, no assists. But he's done relatively well so far, playing a lot of fourth line, essentially, with Bo Horvat and Sam Reinhart. That's kind of where he's been right now. Just kind of, fitting in with the time as much as he's gotten. But when you look at what Canada has done, scored 20 goals, only giving up 3, they are pretty much dominating the Olympics as of right now. So, unfortunate for Seth, nothing as of yet in terms of points, but there's so much runway left. With the fact that Canada's already in the quarterfinal and then, semis and the gold, the medal games and stuff like that, I'm not going to be surprised when Seth Jarvis does get a point, but he's done pretty well so far for Canada in his efforts, with the, time he's been given. He's really shown that, even if he's not on the score sheet, he's still a very impactful player on the ice. And it's also cool to see that his buddies did finally make it over to Milan to catch the last couple games, especially for his debut. So it's really cool to see. Now, moving on to the Finland side of things, Sebastian Aho, how about 2 goals, 1 assist for 3 points and a +1? Very awesome to see for Sebastian. The fact that in the last game that Finland played, he did score 2 goals, which did help set them up as the number 4 seed, which really has benefited Finland in terms of that aspect. So for them, and especially for Sebastian, that will really give them, Team Finland a decent enough shot when it comes to the quarterfinal games, all that stuff. Because when we talk about in segment 3, we'll know more exactly who's playing what. But for where Finland's at, they are definitely in a good spot overall. Now, moving on to the United States, Jaccob Slavin does have an assist. He got the secondary on the Matt Boldy goal in Game 2 of the tournament. Of course, USA sweeping Group C. They got the number 2 seed, like I mentioned. But Jaccob Slavin, he's been with Brock Faber the entire time. Obviously, it's no real surprise at how good the United States have been. The game against Denmark was a little dicey. They were down 2-1 after the first period, but then we're able to come back and absolutely just pour it on. So they did it overall. It's a job that worked out very well for them, and you love to see it. But for Jaccob Slavin, first Olympics, did get his first point, which is awesome to say. Hopefully we can see a little bit more of that, and hopefully he gets his first goal, which would be really cool to see. Now, moving on to Denmark. Denmark did beat Latvia in their last game on Sunday to secure the number 3 spot in Group C, which gives them the number 9 seed overall going into the quarterfinal qualifier knockout stage games. Nikolaj Ehlers does have a goal and 2 assists for 3 points, and does have a +3. He scored a goal in Denmark's win over Latvia. So it's cool to see Fly get on the score sheet in terms of a goal, but Has picked up a couple assists, 3 points in 3 games. Like I said, a +3, not bad overall. And then Frederik Andersen did play in the game against Germany. Unfortunately, did get the loss there, but 33 saves on 35 shots against Latvia gives him an over a 940 save percentage, which does boost his save percentage back up to a 91.8%, and his goals against average are 2.58, which really isn't bad when you think about it, for the fact that he only gave up 2 goals to Latvia, 3 goals to Germany. So he gave up 5 goals in 2 games. When you look at his goals against average being at 2.58, that's really not bad when you look at Frederik Diskow, who had a 6.75. Of course, he had 9 saves on 10 shots in a game where Sogard had to come out a little earlier. He had 587 goals against and an 86.49 save percentage. So not the greatest outside of the younger guys for Denmark, but I mean, what can you really do? It is what it is. But for Frederik Andersen, 2 games, did get a win, 91.8 save percentage, 2.58 goals against. And like I said, Nikolaj Ehlers, 3 points, 2 of them were goals, and as a +3. Jaccob Slavin, +1. Sebastian Aho, +1. And, of course, Seth Jarvis with an even. And that's kind of what you're looking at right now for the Carolina Hurricanes in terms of how those guys have done so far through the tournament. And it's been a very interesting tournament, all things considered, when you look at the fact that Canada basically dominated everyone. Of course, Tom Wilson got into a fight. No disciplinary action is going to happen, but hey, you can't really do that in the Olympics. And, it happened, but it is what it is. I mean, when Sebastian Aho scored his 2 goals for Finland, it was an absolute domination against Italy, 11-0. Canada basically, like I said, Canada ran away with a lot of the games. The United States, they took care of business. I think it was 5-1 against Germany. They, won 6-3 against Denmark, and then took care of 5-1 against Latvia as well. So another, you got the 2 teams who should really swept their groups, no really any issues there when you look at how all that played out. And then when you kind of look at where you're at with the standings of the tournament, going through the group stages at least, moving on to the quarterfinals, with the, prelims and stuff like that. Canada, 23 in goal differentials, all picked up all 9 points. Switzerland, Czechia, France. That's how those Group A finished. France -15 in the goal differential, lost all 3 of their games. Czechia -3 in goal differential. Switzerland was a +1 in Group B. Slovakia 1-2, lost 1, +2 goal differential. Finland, did have a goal differential of +11, but with the fact that Slovakia did what they did, they were able to stay ahead of the Finns. Sweden, also same amount of points, but goal differential of a +2. And then Italy lost all 3 of their games, finished with a -15 goal differential. Group C, like we talked about, +11 for the States in terms of their differential, did win all 3 of their games. Germany -3, Denmark -3 on the goal differential, and then -5 for Latvia. Germany, Denmark, and Latvia basically all finished 1-0-0 and 2. But goal differentials and head-to-heads and stuff like that. That's where you get USA, Germany, Denmark, and like I said, Group B, Slovakia, Finland, Sweden, Italy, and then Canada, Switzerland, Czechia, and France, which sets up a very, very interesting group stages as we kind of move on to the knockout playoff, whatever you want to call it, type of thing when it comes to all that. But for the Carolina Hurricanes, like I said, they've had guys who, play decently well, different aspects of what, the importance is, or just what their roles are for the teams. Like I said, Slavin's done pretty well, got an assist, basically, with him favoring the rest of the defense, shut down the other teams for the most part for USA. You see Ehlers and what he did for Denmark in their 3 games, same thing for Sebastian Aho and Frederik Andersen, shutting the door. Has a +900, over 900 save percentage, and Seth Jarvis, while he hasn't put any points on the board yet, has been a factor for Canada. That being said, who are my 3 Hurricane standouts so far through the prelims? Stick around, we'll talk about that in a second on a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you already looking at the board and thinking about which team to make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. And now, not only can you pick cash, but it could also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Olympic hockey is here, and we set up the Olympic group chat in the Everyday Club Discord so you can watch along with other hockey fans. Members also get Locked On Hurricanes ad-free. Join now in the link in the show notes to learn more and sign up today. $5 a month or $50 for the entire year. Also, come and hang out and talk trade rumors with us over at the Everyday Club Discord. If you sign up, you also get the ad-free versions of this show and other shows within the network as well. So make sure to do that very, very soon. Welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. All right, so we talk about the Olympic updates, how everyone's done so far and stuff like that. And for me, who are my 3 Hurricane standouts? I think overall, when you look across the board and you could say, okay, well, who's the most points? Who's done this and that? And all that. I would say number 1 for me, and he's only had a secondary assist, but that's kind of, it's more of being a shutdown guy. And for me, that is Jaccob Slavin. I think Jaccob Slavin's one of my standouts just because of the fact of what he's done for USA and the fact that, you look at their goal differentials and stuff like that. Yeah, it's, you can look at Finland, it's plus 11, Canada's plus 17, but USA was a plus 11 as well. They took care of business in all 3 of their games. Yes. Denmark was a little close, but when you look at what Slavin's done, I mean, he's a plus 1, does have an assist. Yeah, there's a couple other guys of Hurricanes players who had a better plus minus, and yeah, we'll definitely talk about them as well. But for someone who's done their job to shut down the other teams within their group, and I know some people get look at, Group C was Germany and Denmark and Latvia. That wasn't really probably the strongest group, but when you look at, maybe Group B, which is probably the hardest group out of the entire one, when you got Slovakia, Finland, Sweden. Sure, yes, that is a tougher group to face. In Canada, you could make the case that Canada probably had the easier-ish group, but I mean, Switzerland and Czechia is no one to look over on. But I think in terms of what you're asking for out of your guys, especially for USA, you want to shut down the other teams, regardless of the fact of, how strong the group is. I mean, Germany still has a bunch of good NHLers. Same thing with Denmark. Even Latvia's got some really good players as well. So for me, I think, what Jaccob Slavin has done to help USA kind of shut those guys down, do good on the penalty kill. They were able to sweep the group, and I think that's something that really speaks a lot for the guys like that and what Jaccob Slavin has done for USA. Now, the second guy I definitely want to talk about is Sebastian Aho with Finland. I mean, like I said, 2 goals, 3 points is a plus 1. Did help Finland put themselves into a good spot to get number 2 in their group. Even though they were in the 3 with Czechoslovakia, goal differentials, head-to-heads, and stuff like that. But he was an impact for Finland. He did score 2 goals in their, absolute rout of Italy. But he's someone who's always been impactful for Finland. You're talking World Juniors, even the World Championships, 4 nations, stuff like that. That's why he's an alternate captain. That's why he's very well respected. I think when you look at overall just how you want to look at guys who've been impactful, who've been a standout, I think Sebastian Aho is definitely one of them. He took a lot of shots in, the game against Slovakia and just overall what they've done. And of course, Finland, Sweden, of course, that game was always tough. And I think he was a, big contributor on that side of things as well. For the third guy, it's kind of tough because you could look at, Frederik Andersen, what he done with his, in goal for Denmark. But I think just what Nikolaj Ehlers has done for the Danes. I mean, you're talking about 1 goal, 3 points, and a plus 3. Like, Denmark hasn't had an easy road. Like I said, you lost a close game to Germany. You were up on the Americans, but then in the end got beat 6-3, and then you had to go and you had to beat Latvia to put yourself into a better spot, and they did, scoring 3 goals in the first period. Really set themselves up to win that one. And if you're talking about importance, I think that's where you look at Nikolaj Ehlers, and he's a one-man zone entry. He creates a lot of opportunities for those guys as well. And you heard it when I talked to Parker McLean, with On the Fly, last Monday's show, talk about the importance of who needs to do what for their countries. And he said, you're looking at Ehlers, you're looking at Andersen. Those are the 2 big guys. And Aho, Slavin, Jarvis. That's kind of what you're looking at for in terms of the importance. And the guys who really, really needed to step up did step up for their teams. Of course, overall mixed bag of how things definitely went, especially when looking at Denmark, where they're the 9 seed. Finland, you're looking at a team who got the 4 seed, but they took care of business, and USA is the 2 seed. They didn't really get it because Canada absolutely smoked everyone. When you're looking at a plus 17 goal differential, and the United States had to beat Germany by 10 goals. Kind of hard to do when you're facing a Germany team that's not really, France, Italy, and nothing against those 2 teams, but those teams you can put up 9, 10, 11 goals against and have a big goal differential difference where, you beat Latvia 5-1, you beat Denmark 6-3, Germany 5-1. Yeah, there's some good goal differentials there, but you're not winning 10-0, 11-0, stuff like that. So, but Slavin's done a lot for USA. Like I said, Nikolaj Ehlers did a lot for Denmark. You could make an argument for Frederik Andersen, who, like I said, you look at his stats, and a 91.8 save percent. It's a really good save percentage, 2.58 goals against. Those guys, they did their jobs. And I think when you look at the end of the day of who really stood out of the 5, guys for the Hurricanes, I think you got to go with Slavin just because defensively what he did with Faber with USA. You look at what Aho did for Finland, scores 2 goals in the game against Italy, finishes with a +3. And then you look at what Nikolaj Ehlers done, Aho was a +1, Ehlers was a +3. And he was very impactful for Denmark, and got them at least into a little bit of a better spot. But like I said, Andersen could be someone to look at. I think Seth Jarvis did really well. It's just unfortunate, it's when he's given limited minutes, 4th line, his roles and stuff like that. You would love to say, yeah, he was a standout, but that's just unfortunate how Canada's using Seth Jarvis right now. But I think he was very noticeable. He was doing what he usually does for the Hurricanes. It's just you can do what you can with the opportunities that you have. But overall, all 5 guys have done great. But if they're talking about 3 Hurricanes players that really have stuck out to me, it's definitely Slavin, Aho, and Ehlers. Those are the 3 guys you're kind of really looking at. But if you're on the YouTube side of things, let me know who are your 3 Hurricane standouts so far in this tournament through the prelims before we go into the playoffs. That being said, what do the playoffs look like, and what does it look like for all 4 teams for the Hurricanes guys that they're on? We'll stick around and we'll talk about that here in a second on a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. All right, so we talked about, the updates of the Hurricanes players overall through the Olympic, prelims, talk about the 3 Hurricane standings, but now let's talk about the quarterfinal qualifiers and the quarterfinals as a whole. Now, we all know the 4 teams that got the automatic bye: Slovakia, Finland, Canada, and the United States. Now, the quarterfinal winners are reseeded for the semifinal round and stuff like that, so this can be very, very interesting of how it plays out. Canada's the 1 seed, USA is the 2, Slovakia is 3, Finland is 4. Depending on how some of these games shake out, the United States could potentially play Canada in the gold medal game, depending on how the reseeding goes and how certain teams win. We'll see if, Finland makes it there too. But when you look at the seedings, you got, like I said, you got the 8-9 of Czechia, Denmark, and the winner of that game gets to go and play Canada. So Nikolaj Ehlers and Frederik Andersen already have to play the 8th seed in, Martin Necas, David Pastrnak, and those guys, and then you go get to play Canada, who's the number 1 seed, against Seth Jarvis and those guys who've gotten a plus 17 goal differential. You look at Sweden, Latvia. Well, winner of Sweden, Latvia get to go play the United States. So that makes it very interesting in terms of how that whole thing plays out. Now, you look at Switzerland, Italy. Winner of that game goes and plays Finland. Winner of Germany, France gets to go play Slovakia. And then past that, we get the reseedings of, who's the better seed out of, Germany, France, Sweden, Italy, Czechia, Denmark, Sweden, Latvia. And then they play those teams. So when you look at how the quarterfinals stack out, Sebastian Aho and Finland could be facing, Sweden, Italy. And that's the 5-12 teams. And then, Germany, France get to go play Slovakia. Like I said, Seth Jarvis in Canada gets to play Czechia, Denmark, and Slavin and those guys of the United States get Sweden, Latvia, that is definitely a tough possible group to go down for the United States, because there's a potential where you could be playing Sweden, Finland back to back, depending on seedings. And if you're Canada, you get, like I said, you get Czechia, Denmark, and then you probably get the winner of Germany, Slovakia. So, yeah, there's a potential that Canada and the United States could face each other in a final for the gold medal game. But I think USA is going to have a little bit more of an interesting path if they do get Sweden, Finland back to back, and Canada gets possibly Czechia, Denmark, and Germany, Slovakia. But even then, I would not even count out the Slovaks. If Slovakia plays Canada, I wouldn't overlook those guys. They've played very, very well in their tournament so far. But I would still wouldn't even, look past the Finns or even Sweden. But of course, that just depends on how the groups really essentially play out. So there's a lot of avenues when you come to how the Hurricanes and their those guys with their national teams are going to be facing each other. So if you thought the group stages were very interesting, you're looking at the knockout playoffs as another one too. So that's tough when you got teams like Denmark who had to fight their way into a 9 seed against Czechia. That's already a tough battle, because the Czech team isn't someone that's going to roll over. And then you go right into Canada, who's, like I said, on a plus 17 goal differential and have a bye. Like, they're just chomping at the bit, waiting for who's ever going to make it out of the qualifier. Like I said, Aho and Finland, yeah, they're the 4 seed, but you get the better option of a 5 seed, Switzerland, and the 12 seed Italy. Obviously, I don't see how Sweden doesn't advance out of that game. And then the Slovaks, you get a very low 11 seed France against a Germany team that's in a little bit of a better spot. So that's where I feel like if you're USA, Canada, you feel like you're in a better spot, because, yeah, you might get a little bit of a tougher road with the Czechs and the Swedes compared to Finland, who's getting a few other possible teams. But overall, it should be fun. It should be interesting to see how it all plays out when it comes to just the overall aspect of, the seedings and stuff like that. But only time will tell. Like I said, we do have the fact that when you look at the schedule of where everything plays out, there are no games on Monday. Everything gets pushed back to the 17th, and then we move on to the 18th, where you move on from the qualifiers to the quarterfinal qualifying games, and you move on to the quarterfinals, and then you get the day off on the 19th, which is that Thursday, and then Friday the 20th is where you move on to the semifinals, and then after the semifinals, you get the bronze medal game on the 21st, and of course the gold medal game on the 22nd. So it's crazy to think that we're already on the second full week of the games, and then by next Sunday, the 22nd, we're going to know who's going to win the gold medal. And by Saturday, we're going to know who's going to take the bronze. So this will be very interesting to see how it all plays out. But overall, I'm like what the guys from the Hurricanes are doing for their national teams. Hopefully, Seth Jarvis gets a little bit more time with Canada. I think he'll get his first Olympic goal. It should be great to see. Hopefully, we do get hopefully see Jaccob Slavin gets his first Olympic goal as well, because he definitely deserves one after everything he had to go through this year, and for the fact that this is an opportunity for him to really show out on the Olympic stage after what he did for USA at Four Nations. But overall, the games I have been able to catch, since unfortunately I've had to work during the week, it's been fun watching the games, over the last, between Friday and the weekend. A lot of great hockey. I think we're going to have a lot more interesting hockey over the next few days as well, between Tuesday, when you look at just how all that's going to play out between Tuesday and Wednesday with the quarterfinal qualifiers and the quarterfinals themselves, and then it's the semis, and then the medal games over next weekend. But I don't know. It'll be fun. It'll be great to see, and hopefully get some more great hockey as we've seen so far. But let me know in the comments what you guys think so far of just how the Hurricanes guys have been doing so far. What games have you liked the most? Who do you think is going to be winning out of the quarterfinal qualifiers to move on to the quarters and all of that good stuff? There's a lot of great hockey coming up over the next few days. And obviously, too, we're still going to sprinkle in a lot more Hurricanes-related podcasts as well. I know we've done a lot of grades recently on the new guys, just did the young guns on last Friday's show. So stay tuned. Maybe on Tuesday's show, we might talk about some of the bigger guys on the Hurricanes. Maybe we're, talking about Aho. Maybe it's Jarvis. Maybe it is Nikolaj Ehlers, or who knows? We'll definitely be talking about some guys on the higher end of the point totals for the Hurricanes for Tuesday's show. So make sure to stick around for that. But guys, this will be the Monday edition of Hurricanes. Thank you for listening. You've never missed an episode. Every day we're built for you to get Locked On Hurricanes ad-free, plus a members-only Discord access and more. Head the link in the show notes to join the club today and sign up and learn more about it. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure to make your second listen to the NHL Game Night on Locked On AHL. If you want to keep up with me, I'm at OneTrueZach on X. The podcast is @LO_Hurricanes. I'm also on Blue Sky at @TheZacharyMartin, where if you click the link to my bio, you can find all my written content at thehockeywriters.com. Have done a little bit of Hurricane stuff, but have also been doing a lot of Olympic coverage as well to help those guys on those side of things. If you want to check out my other podcasts, it's the Searchcast on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. For Locked On Hurricanes, we're on Spotify, Google, Apple, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen to your podcast. Make sure to leave a 5-star rating and review. On YouTube, it's Locked On Hurricanes. Subscribe, hit the bell notification so you don't miss a show. Hit the thumbs up so let me know if you like the show as well. Share with other Canucks to become everydayers just like you. But hope everyone enjoyed the Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Enjoy your Monday until next time. As always, let's go Canes.